good evening, everyone. This is State Representative Brad Halbrook, along with fellow Freedom Caucus members, bringing you another Tuesday night edition of our Roundtable in Town Hall. We got another special guest this evening with Brenden Bourdreau. I hope I said that right. I know we'll get more of an introduction and a correct enunciation of your name, so I apologize there momentarily.
No worries.
Excellent. So, we try to bring a new definition to truth, logic, and common sense as we search that out in an area where all that seems to be very, very lacking. So so we are the Illinois Freedom Caucus Live and hopefully on demand. We always covet your sharing and liking and following and subscribing to our multiple channels as we continue to get the message out. With that, we're going to get right into it. We're going to go around the table, make some introductions. I'm going to kick it off with Chris Miller. Representative is the leader of our Illinois Freedom Caucus. Representative Chris Miller, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Brad. Thank you, the rest of you patriots, for joining us here this evening. We are so glad that you chose to be with us and tune in. You know, the Democrats are taking a little break from their normal tax, borrow, and spending, and they've kind of gone on to the regulation side of things. You know, I always remember what Ronald Reagan said about the Democrats when it came to these issues, because said the template is the Democrats' ideal is if it moves, taxes; if it keeps moving, regulate it; and if it stops moving, subsidize it. And so I'm not sure where we're at on the pendulum here, but I know that the gun grabbers are at it again, and we've seen this movie before. So it's important for us to stand up and let our voices be heard, and to push back against this radical attack by the radical left, by the dangerous Democrats on our Second Amendment rights here in the state of Illinois once again.
Excellent, Chris. Thank you for that. Next up, Representative Blaine Wilhauer. Blaine, welcome.
Hey, Brad. Good to be here this evening. Thank you, all of you loyal listeners and accountability partners, for being out here with us today. We've got a good show going today. We're happy to have Brenden Bourdreau with us today, who is a gun rights expert all across the country. Adam and I have got to know him a little bit through Young Americans for Liberty, which is also a great organization. So we're excited to have him here today. We have got a little bit of breaking news that's unfolding on the TRO case in Effingham County. I've just got communications from Mr. DeVore that the Fifth Appellate Circuit has upheld that TRO. So that is a big deal, and that's going to open the floodgates, I think, for a lot of these other suits to move forward, like our one that Adam and I are on in White County, and Dan Calkins has got another one later this week. So this train is moving. The law and the Constitution still do matter here in the state of Illinois, and the state of Illinois still has a Second Amendment, and we aren't going to stop fighting and advocating to make sure that those rights are upheld. So appreciate you guys being here, excited about what we're doing today.
Excellent, Blaine. Thank you for that report. And that's really good news. It's really important news to hear out of the Fifth Appellate earlier this afternoon, I should say. So with that, I just want to, before we bring Adam on to introduce our guest, Dan Calkins, Representative Calkins, will join us hopefully sometime in this stream. He's just kind of got some commitments. I just want to let everybody know as we start this off, where's Dan? And he should be with us if all goes well here soon yet before we conclude this. So with that, Representative Newberg, the floor is yours. Tell us what's going on in your neighborhood and introduce our guest for this evening.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks to everybody tuning in with us here this evening. We're getting started with session today. So we're back in Springfield here dealing with the Springfield swamp. But as Blaine talked about, we're hoping for a TRO to come out in our case down in White County. That's great news that the Fifth Appellate upheld the TRO in Effingham County, and with Representative Calkins filing a suit, as well as other gun advocacy groups filing federal suits. Hopefully we see this keep moving in the right direction. But folks, we have a special guest today with us. I met Brenden a couple years ago down in Orlando for a Young Americans for Liberty Summit. And actually, I've got this hat here. Brenden, this hat is wearing out. I got it down in Orlando in November of 20. and
We'll
I
have
wear
to
it
get you a
cutting.
new one.
That's great. I like this one. I wear it cutting firewood. I wear it all over the place. It's a great hat. So a big supporter of what you guys are doing. And folks, Brandon's on the cutting edge of this. He deals with the gun issue all over America in every single state. So when it comes to constitutional carry, he's your guy. National Association of Gun Rights, they are the top-notch gun advocacy group in the country. So without further ado, Brenden Bourdreau, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of what you see coming from Illinois and the rest of the country.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I'm the Director of Field Operations for the National Association for Gun Rights. I've been working with them since 2014. It's been a fun time to be in the gun rights movement. When I started with NAGR, there were only 4 states in the country that had constitutional carry, which constitutional carry simply says that if you can legally possess a handgun, you can carry it openly or concealed without having to get the permit. It's a crazy idea that the radical left and the anti-gun crowd hate, but thanks to the gun rights community, the gun rights movement, and NAGR members across the country, we are now in 25 states, and in fact, Illinois is practically completely surrounded by constitutional carry states. So as we've seen, over the last 8-9 years now, the gun rights issue is transforming. And what was once seen as a crazy, wild-eyed idea to have no permit required to carry a handgun for self-defense, or just carry because it's your right, is now law in half the country, and we could very well see a couple more states join this year. As we see this last year, we had a big Supreme Court decision, the Bruen decision, that radically changed how the courts should be looking at the interpretation of the Second Amendment, and that has the potential to save gun rights in states like Illinois or in California, where the Democrats are just running roughshod over your Second Amendment rights. But we might hopefully soon see the courts rein states like Illinois, California, New York, New Jersey, and other states that have these horrible anti-gun regimes that need to be struck down by the courts. And we'll see. Illinois might have the opportunity to be the test case to see if their gun ban gets struck down. And actually, just within the last week, our legal foundation just filed a lawsuit against Illinois to strike down their gun ban. We had already been suing Naperville and Highland Park over their assault weapons bans. So we said, why not make it a trifecta and sue them all? So it's really exciting. Obviously it's horrible what's happening there, what the Democrats have done, what the governor has done. But what we've seen is when the Democrats overreach, we've seen more gun rights get restored eventually because the courts start swatting these things down. And now we're kind of in this test phase where we get to see how the courts are going to handle Bruen and these various restrictions that, by the new standards laid down by the Bruen decision, I mean, certainly most of these restrictions should fall.
Excellent. And so Dan Calkins have just joined us. Dan, we'll put you on for just a second to say hi and welcome to the show this evening. Dan, what's going on?
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Brad, and everybody. Welcome. It's good to be back with you. I apologize. I had double booked my 1 o'clock, my 7 o'clock this evening. So we're here. This is a big day in Illinois, and I think it's what the gun rights folks and FFL and the NRA and ISRA and GSL. I mean, what they're doing in the federal courts are. I don't think the Democrats want you guys to win in federal court. I think they may call uncle in the state court. The first lawsuit was upheld in appellate court today, primarily based on equal protection, the way the bill was passed. Doesn't say anything about the bill being constitutional or not. So what you guys, Brenden, what you guys are doing is still vitally important to not only us in Illinois, but I think every state. And the Democrats ought to be scared to death of you winning, because it will set a tidal wave across this country. So we'll do what we can to help support you, and man, keep fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our organization, our legal foundation, filed lawsuits against several states. I think it's 7 jurisdictions. I've lost count. Different states that have so-called assault weapons bans on the books, and the goal, and they're all in different circuit courts to see, who's going to take this up first as these lawsuits work their way through the courts, the various courts. We're starting to see kind of little glimpses of how the courts are going to interpret the Second Amendment in light of Bruin. What's interesting is, even if you look at the state of New York, you had a Supreme Court justice. Supreme Court in New York State is not the highest court. That's actually the appeals court. It's New York State. They have to do everything different there, I guess. But you had a Supreme Court justice out of Rochester who struck down New York State's red flag law, and he highly relied upon the Bruin decision, which is incredible to see, as a state court strike down a red flag law in light of the Bruin decision. Because of a lack of constitutional protections. And of course, Illinois has a red flag law, which hasn't saved any lives there. They of course say that, well, we just have to red flag harder, which is just code for, we know that our gun control law failed, and now we want to try to go tinker with it more and just violate your rights more. So, it really, like I said, it's an exciting time. Sad given the circumstances, but we're just kind of all waiting to see what are the courts going to do with this. And Lord willing, the Supreme Court stays in conservative control. That's not always a foregone conclusion, and that's why ultimately, we need to have grassroots gun rights activists mobilized across the country and fighting these things and holding politicians accountable. Here in Illinois, you've got huge Democrat majorities. Well, come 2024, some Democrats have to pay a political price for voting for gun control if there's going to be any opportunity of teaching them the lesson. And them getting struck down by the courts too would obviously help as well. But it's got to be both and. We can't just rely on the courts, because the courts have disappointed before. They remember the Roberts courts decided that Obamacare was a tax. And we don't want to, put all our eggs in one basket. And of course, the founders wouldn't want us to put all our eggs in one basket. We have 3 separate branches in the federal government, and then we have the state and federal governments, and each of them have their specific roles. They act as checks and balances against one another. And, there was never supposed to be, well, all the courts are supposed to decide what's constitutional or not. Because the courts have certainly gotten many things wrong over the years, and that's where having legislators who are willing to fight and stand for truth and freedom, there in Illinois and state legislatures across the country is so crucial. There's too many states where this garbage can pass unanimously because they're just not people willing to fight. But standing up and fighting gives you an opportunity to stand and fight for another day, and it just shows the absurdity of the laws that they're passing. And, hopefully, in Illinois and states elsewhere, there can be a good grassroots army, even in the deepest of blue states, who just said, we've had enough. And we want to replace our legislators with people who are going to respect our constitutional rights.
Excellent stuff. Hey, Brandon, while we're kind of letting everybody get warmed up here to kind of have a little discussion, I seen here that Florida filed legislation. I know you're on defense a lot in a lot of places, but here's a state that's on the offense. Florida's set to become the 26th state to have a permitless carry. How much does your organization play in to kind of seeing those kind of positive things for the Second Amendment happen? How much do you guys play into those kind of scenarios?
Yeah, that's where I've spent most of my career at NAGR. I've had the opportunity to help pass constitutional carry laws in more than a dozen states. I am working on the Florida law as well. Unfortunately, it doesn't go as far as we'd like it to. They keep the ban on open carry on the books as in the introduced bill. Which Florida is only one of 4 other states, including Illinois, that outright bans open carry. And it's like we're trying to tell Republicans there and tell Governor DeSantis, hey, look, you don't want to keep company with these other states, and no other constitutional carry state has a ban on open carry. constitutional carry applies to open carry and concealed carry. We want those treated the same under the law. So, I'm glad to see that, after 2018, where they passed just a slew of gun control laws, that we're getting a permitless carry bill introduced, albeit it needs some work. And that's what we're going to be encouraging our members to do, is tell them, hey, you got Republican supermajorities. There's no reason not to go for the whole hog here. Just get it done. Let's set an example for the rest of the country to follow, instead of just doing a half measure.
Excellent. Guys, any other questions or thoughts for Brenden while we've got him here? Just open it up.
Brenden,
how bad is Illinois' gun control law in contrast with other states? Are we in the top echelon here?
Yeah. Or? It's pretty bad. I haven't had a big opportunity to dig into all of the specifics on it. I had an opportunity to just kind of look at some of our notes on it. But, you're talking about ban on one of the most commonly owned firearms, or not just one type of firearm, but, anything that meets their list of definitions. And of course, they have an actual list that they're banning, the sale, transfer, transportation of. And then, if you have them, you have to register them. I mean, whenever government starts requiring registration for firearms, it tells me they have ill intent. And we've seen California start pulling that kind of nonsense, where, they have a record of it. So, it's pretty bad. And here's hoping we can, get it struck down before it has really any opportunity to really truly trample on your rights any more than it already has.
Are other states in the process in federal court on already? And who do you think is on the fastest track to get heard in a federal court?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're suing. Let me try to think of the states we're suing right now. I think we're suing Connecticut. I know we're suing Illinois now, possibly Massachusetts. I want to say there's a couple of that I'm just drawing a blank on right now, but they're all just kind of like in this waiting game. We're just kind of waiting for them to start responding. And I know other gun rights organizations are suing other states. I mean, like it's kind of a free for all right now, that the various gun bans are all getting challenged in the courts, and you have other gun control schemes that are getting thrown in the courts as well. Obviously we've seen New York State. Their Bruin response bill is kind of working its way through the Second Circuit right now, and the Supreme Court is kind of keeping itself at length. Not that they're necessarily saying, "Oh, we're not going to touch it." They're just kind of letting it work through the process before they kind of get involved there. So honestly, that has the opportunity to be the most interesting to see, because states like New York and New Jersey have done their Bruin response bills, and they're clearly still in violation of Bruin. And the circuit courts are not exactly moving the most quickly to say, oh yeah, you're right, these laws are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court is saying, explain yourself, please, why you think that this should be handled this way. And it'll be really interesting to see how the Supreme Court handles that. If the Supreme Court's just going to say, well, nice try, we're going to slap it down, or if they're going to have a measured response. I mean, we've seen the Supreme Court take measured response before, but we ultimately have Justice Thomas there, who I don't think has much patience for any of this, which is just fun to see.
And Brenden, you talked about going from 4 to 25, and I think a friend of ours, Kurt Nisley, passed constitutional carry over in Indiana last year. So when you talk about us being on an island in Illinois, as well as with the FOID card, we have some serious work to do. But can you explain a little bit about what happened over in Indiana?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Indiana's been it's been a state that's on the gun rights issue. They've been pretty good. Up until they passed constitutional carry. I mean, their big one flaw was that they passed red flag back in 2005, which then, of course, Democrats in other states are like, well, if Republicans in Indiana can support red flag, then why can't you support red flag here? Which is one of the most obnoxious things to hear. But what's interesting about Indiana's red flag law is that it's rarely used. That doesn't justify its existence. We're actually working with the Hazlitt member, Zach Payne, to repeal Indiana's red flag law because it violates due process. It should not exist. And I think we'll see that as the Bruin decision, works to strike down these various restrictions, that red flag law should fall as well. But Indiana was a multi-year process for passing constitutional carry there, and even in a state where there are Republican supermajorities, we had resistance from Republicans who didn't want to pass constitutional carry. Much of it has to do is they have bloated ratings from other gun rights organizations. They think, well, I've done enough. We made the permit free, or we reduced the permit fee. Why are people complaining about going through the permit process? You don't have to pay anything for the permit. Well, I mean, the Second Amendment seems pretty clear. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't see anything about there being a permit to carry, permit to possess, anything like that. And ultimately, it just took time to hold Republicans accountable in the election year who were being obstructionist on constitutional carry in red Indiana to finally get them to support constitutional carry. We started first pushing constitutional carry in Indiana in 2015, and it finally became law just last year. So that's 7 years. It took some time to pass constitutional carry there. It's not for another state then this will blow you guys away. South Dakota. It's not exactly known for being, a safe spot for Democrats. I mean, I think there's single-digit Democrats left in the state legislature now. It took almost 2 decades to pass constitutional carry there because Republicans were being obstructionists there. They didn't see a need for passing constitutional carry. They felt that they had done enough to make the permit easy to get. And ultimately, the problem is that these Republicans ultimately rejected freedom. They believed that government permission on the right to keep and bear arms was an okay infringement. And of course, we at the National Association for Gun Rights reject that premise. We believe that it's a fundamental right. It's a right that the right of self-defense and the right of self-preservation is a right that is given to us by God, that is then protected by the Constitution. And if you look at, as the Bruin decision does, the text, history, and tradition, guess what? In the early founding of our nation, there was no permit to carry. So that's what we're kind of in the process of dismantling. And even in a state like Indiana, where you had pro-gun Republicans in control there, it took some years to get them to realize that this is an issue that you guys have to be right on. It's almost easier to pass it in a state that recently went from Democrat to Republican control because there's all this pent up energy to get something big done, versus in a Republican state, they're just kind of like, oh, well, we've done enough. We don't have to do anything big.
Right. Well, you talk about freedom. Freedom is alive and well with the Freedom Caucus here in Illinois. So we all support what you're doing. Folks, I'm so excited to have Brenden on today because he's getting the job done. When he started constitutional carry, now they're looking at 25. They're in every state. They're suing 7 states in court right now. So they're really active. And something that keeps my faith going on this issue is when the Bruin case was sent down last year. We're talking about things like red flag, what Brenden was just talking about, and that other big word, the FOID card. So you never know where this is going to go. So thanks for being with us here this evening, and Brenden, thanks for being on with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Brenden, tell us a little bit about the AGR, how you're funded, who you work with. Do you have individual state organizations, or is it just the national AGR?
Yeah, so the National Association for Gun Rights is a national organization. We have about just over 4 million members and supporters nationwide. We are a smaller dollar grassroots organization, meaning that we have millions of members that contribute to fund what we do. That gives us a big base of gun rights activists to fire up and get involved in the various fights across the country. We do have state affiliates in 4 or 5 states right now. I live up in Michigan. I'm also the executive director for Great Lakes Gun Rights, and we're obviously busy here defending our gun rights, making sure that the Democrats here don't learn too much from Illinois, from the Illinois Democrats. But those states that we've been operating in for years, Texas gun rights, we've got state affiliate in Florida, South Carolina. These are states that we've kind of built as a beachhead, where we said we are going to commit extra resources in these states to try to pass constitutional carry in these states, because we believe that constitutional carry is the next wave in the gun rights movement. And as we pass more constitutional carry laws, it's better for the whole country as a whole. I mean, we're talking about in Congress, about a decade or so ago, we were only talking about, a national permit scheme as the best that we could get done. Now we're talking about doing a national constitutional carry law as a possibility, where all of a sudden states like Illinois or California, who really had no hope of having their gun rights restored, now have a possibility either through the courts or through a Republican Congress of getting their rights restored, which is huge.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Brenden, we hear a lot in Illinois that says this legislation that was passed a few weeks ago here in Illinois, 7 or 8 other states have that. Is that a factual statement, or how do you respond to the statement of the Illinois Democrats to say 7 or 8 other states have something very similar, if not the exact same thing?
Yeah, they can say that, but then you can also say there's 43 other states that don't. So that's, they act as if like, oh, well, everyone else is doing this. Well, no, you're in an extreme minority when it comes to restrictions on what firearms can be owned in your state. And frankly, they're setting themselves up to waste millions of dollars in taxpayer dollars to defend these laws. Of course, Democrats aren't typically overly concerned with protecting the taxpayers. So, for them to use taxpayer dollars to defend these ridiculous laws in the courts is a par for the course. But, there are no Republican controlled states that have passed these laws. So like to think that this is some kind of a bipartisan win or this is some kind of a normal thing is, it's like what I was talking about with Florida, with Florida not doing open carry with their constitutional carry bill. There are only 4 states that outright ban open carry, which is crazy. So, and this is just the Democrats. It's just the gun control lobby. Right now, they're doing the same thing that, in some degree, the gun rights community is doing too. They're waiting to see what they're going to pass as many gun control laws as they can and see what the courts do with them. And they figure if they can jam up the courts with enough cases, eventually the courts might give them a win on something. So, that's where Illinois Democrats, they can pat themselves on the back, but it might be a Pyrrhic victory at best.
Yeah. Well, so the last kind of question statement I've got is they seem to forget about the second half of that Second Amendment that you and I and all of us agree to, shall not be infringed. They get hung up on the first part, well regulated, right? I mean, I think that's the argument we heard here in committee there late December, early January, whenever it was. Hey, well regulated. They don't believe they can regulate quite enough, but I think they're missing the point. Right. And that's where the Supreme Courts have weighed in. So, hey, Brenden, any closing thoughts that you might have for us? And then we're just going to go kind of a lightning round of table here to kind of close out. The microphone's yours. The floor is yours as we close out this evening, and appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Just really quick, touching on your well-regulated. I mean, it's for Democrats, words no longer have meanings, regulated can be defined into whatever they want it to mean instead of looking at the original intent of what well-regulated meant, which was to be kept regular, not regulate, but to keep regular, which meant to prevent a flow thereof, or a blockage of a practice of a right. So anyway, that, they just start changing the definition of terms, but that's kind of the new fad. But, I appreciate what you guys are doing there in Illinois. We need to have leaders in every state, legislators who are willing to stand up for our right to keep and bear arms. And gun rights activists across the country need to not lose heart. We live in exciting times where we could see, hopefully, a myriad of gun control measures struck down by the courts where we can practice our fundamental rights as protected by the Second Amendment here. So, everything that you guys are doing in Illinois, and that gun rights activists are doing it in Illinois and across the country, it's all important. Sometimes it feels fruitless in tough going states like Illinois, but you're fighting the good fight, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Excellent. Guys, I'm going to bring everybody back on here kind of full screen, and let's go to Blaine to close us out. Or Blaine, make a closing statement.
Hey, the march goes on, guys. Big news earlier today here, and the fight is just beginning. We're expecting great things from Dan Calkins later on in court this week, and hopefully we get a great decision down in White County. And let's get this federal train going and get these rights restored. Let's be the ones in Illinois that start this thing. Wouldn't that be something? But hey, that's what happens when you got guys that stand up and fight. So I'm proud to be with this.
Yeah, excellent. Adam, closing thoughts.
Thank you, Brad and Brenden. Again, thank you very much for being with us here this evening. Folks, this group right here, National Association of Gun Rights and the Freedom Caucus members here in Illinois, we're on the front lines of this. We're the ones out there not only giving floor speeches and being here in the legislature, standing for your Second Amendment rights, but we're also doing it in other aspects. We're doing it in court, as Blaine said, with the White County decision that's still pending, with being there in Effingham, with Dan filing suits, with Chris and Brad, and everything that we're doing. We're the ones that are doing it. So remember, the Freedom Caucus is here to keep Illinois as free as possible, as much as we can. And again, thanks, Brenden, for your time today. And folks, let's get this done.
Excellent. Adam and Chris, we've got a couple of town halls, some live town halls coming up next week and the following week. I think we're putting the details together. We've got one a week from tonight in Arthur. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that, what you can, and then closing thoughts.
Well, we do have a couple of town halls coming up. The one coming up currently is going to be in Arthur, Illinois at Yoder's. Doors open at 6 and meeting starts at 7. And as always, if you're going to Yoder's, you got to have a little coffee and pie. And be honest, full disclosure, coconut cream is my favorite. So, pick another flavor. But that's going to be a great time. It's going to be very informative. And so hope that people will come out for that in-person town hall meeting. And, just to dovetail into what you guys have all said, I want to give a hearty amen to that. And just to add to that, one of the things where we live, people pride themselves of having common sense. And we see here in the People's Republic of Illinois is that common sense is not so common. And sometimes you just want to say, duh, because criminals don't care about law. Anybody listening, criminals do not care about the law. We have over 300 laws currently on the books to save people. I know even since this has been enacted, doesn't look to me like that the shooting rate, the shot clock is running in Chicago, and they're still shooting them up every weekend up there, regardless of Pritzker's unconstitutional law that he got his radical Democrats to pass through in the middle of the night. So anyway, it's important that we are vigilant, that we understand the fight for freedom never ends. We've got fight after fight, but it's important that we win every little battle. So in the end, ultimately, we win the war and truth marches on.
Excellent stuff. Dan Calkins, closing thoughts.
Thank you, Brad. Great to be with you all this evening. We'll see you all in court Friday afternoon, 1:30 here in Macon County. I want to thank Chris and Brad and Blaine and Adam for your help and support in our lawsuit. We're gonna knock them up outside of the head. We've got to keep poking them, but the real victory will come, Brenden, from you guys and all the other people that are in federal court.
Excellent.
I think the Dems have overreached, and you guys can put this to bed using Illinois as your example, and the flag will fly high. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Excellent, guys. IllinoisFreedomCaucus.org. You can find us on our own respective social media sites. And again, IllinoisFreedomCaucus.org. Like and share, follow, and subscribe our content. Brenden, gunrights.org. Looks like where you're at, and appreciate your time and a few minutes here of your schedule. I know you're really busy. And with that, guys, we're signing off.